Welcome to the Why Dad podcast. We are your hosts, Paul Wandry and Andrew Stopelstead, and we are on a mission to figure out what it really means to be a man, a husband, and a father. Not as experts, but as guys try and figure it out, learning what actually matters, what's just noise, and how to become the versions of ourselves our families need and deserve. This is a place for honest conversations, real habits, and the kind of growth that happens intentionally. We're redefining fatherhood one habit at a time. And today, to help us along that journey, we've got Chris Rogers on the show. Chris is a now coach who works with teens and families navigating some of the hardest conversations in today's digital world, especially around pornography, mental health, and identity. And we are really excited for this conversation, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I know we were literally just saying it's been a long time coming, but I'm glad we were able to make it happen. I'm really stoked to be here.
We are just excited to have you on with us to have this conversation because it's a big one. So
Yeah, when it comes to even just the word pornography, like you said, like I'm sure people are gonna be like, "Ugh," like there's like a
right,
shudder. It's like, can we talk about that? It's one of those things where, there is a stigma attached to it. We kind of sweep it under the rug and kind of pretend it doesn't exist until it somehow miraculously pertains to us, right?
right,
But yeah, like as far as what I do and what I'm building and what I'm passionate about, just to, give you the too long didn't read version. Yeah, my name is Chris Rogers. I'm from New York. I've been a teacher in New York City for the better part of a decade, but within the last 3, I am now taking on this role of coaching full time. And yes, what I coach are clients from all around the world that have a history of sexual compulsive behavior. And, it's not exactly dinner table conversation. It can be a little awkward, uncomfortable sometimes.
hmm
But particularly, I mean, this being the Why Dad podcast, I would love to chat about, what we can do to, lead our children in the right direction as far as letting them know what's out there and what's going on, but also statistically speaking, if you are a man in today's day, age, and culture, you probably have some sort of relationship or exposure with porn or sexual compulsive behaviors in our
right,
own life experience. So if we can, if not avoid, but, not lean on that sense of do as I say, not as I do,
right.
therefore we can like actually speak and lead and father from a place of authenticity and integrity, right? So
Yep,
let's crack into it. I'm excited.
awesome.
Yeah, I love that, Chris. And yeah, you mentioned, you used to be a teacher, and I mean, in ways you still are, and that's just kind of folded into your coaching practice. And so you're working with teens and parents every day, right? And but you're not a dad, right? A dad yet, right?
At this point in time, not
Yeah.
yet.
Um, but possibly on the horizon.
Absolutely.
But so, like, why does this matter so much to you?
It matters so much to me for many reasons. One, it comes from a personal place. Again, to make a long story short, if you name the behavior, I've been there. I have asked when it comes to this type of world that I speak about. So it means a whole lot to me, having suffered in silence for a long time, not knowing who to turn, not really feeling like it was safe to talk to anybody because of the way that, this topic has been stigmatized and afraid of perhaps ridicule or judgment or shame. I'm sure we can
hmm
all go our own way. But eventually I found a program in the middle of the pandemic that radically changed my perspective and dare I say my life. And through time and through reps and growth and healing, I was able to use those teacher skills in a brand new way, breaking down things that have really, really just enhanced my own spiritual well-being, mental health, and of course my behavioral patterns. And this matters also a great deal to me because I noticed how the impact of screen time and technology in general, plus once you add the isolation element, has impacted
hmm
my students. I mean, I think we were talking about this some time ago when we first linked up, but I noticed this during the pandemic, and ironically, here we are sort of online again, but I noticed, like, what was being taught around that time, especially
right,
for my young, young students. It was like, Here is on a screen everything you could ever really want or need. It's like, okay, here's where school's gonna be. Here's
Mhm.
where your community, your friends, your family can be found.
Right.
Here's where your entertainment can be found. Here's your information all at the touch of a button on the swipe from your finger, right? And of course, when you add a sexual element to it, it takes that to a brand new level. And we're really talking about a generation unlike any other. I mean, we're talking about a generation that, unlike us, does not know what life is like without social media.
Right.
Like, for us, it's crazy. Like, I vividly remember how big of a deal it was setting up my first MySpace.
Mhm.
But for a generation today, it's not only like an option, it was like, "Oh, here's something you can do." It's the expectation.
Right.
It's
If
the
you don't
norm, you
have
know?
an Instagram, then kids are like, "Who even are you?"
Yeah, it's that FOMO, it's hardcore.
Mhm.
And with the added expectation of just being a performer on a virtual stage, you know? So it's really, really matters because, we're talking about, why can't this generation, put their phone down or why are they so anxious all the time? It's sort of like, well, look at the world we built for them.
Right.
Look at the
Mhm.
culture that we're built into. So as a teacher, I hear fellow teachers and coaches sort of lament a generation's attention span is non-existent, and I've seen it and I get it. I've felt the frustration, but I also want to shout from the mountaintops that it's not 100% their fault. Again, this
Right.
is the world we built for them. So to tie it with a bow, why this matters so much to me is that, technology is gonna blossom and boom, and we wanna, keep with the times, if you will, but we don't want to sacrifice or ultimately lose our sense of communication and humanity. Being able to
Mhm.
check in with yourself, like, "Yo, how am I doing?" To the point where we don't need to depend upon a screen to tell us what to think and how we're feeling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why it matters a lot to me.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you sharing that with Chris, with us, and I think that's something that will resonate with a lot of our listeners, that
Mhm.
that I mean, yeah, the first smartphone was what, '07, '08, and I mean, we're not even 2 decades removed from that, so, like, in the grand scheme of things, we're, like, in the infancy of, that this type of technology and social media and all of that, and still understanding the ramifications of all that.
Mhm.
Have you read the book, you use both of the words, but Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, Chris? Yeah, okay. I c I um, but for our listeners who haven't, Jonathan in that book does a really good job of looking into the correlation, if not causation, of, these things that Chris is talking about and it impacting the increased mental health issues of teens, both boys and girls. And it likened it to, I think it starts out with saying, okay, like there's a new program, they're sending people off to Mars, I think, to like colonize Mars, but they're like taking teens, because they're young enough and whatever. It's like, what parent is just going to, like, ship off their teens to go on this unproven adventure? And yet, like, we have done that, from the get-go with social media. It's like, we don't know what
Mhm.
this is about. And so, that just, I think struck me really, uh, deeply that's like, okay, how intentional are we being about this? But I think the good thing now is it's not too late. It's never too late. We're seeing these effects that is having on ourselves, on our children, and we can make a difference. And you're part of that movement with the focus have from the sexual side of things, at least stereotypically, and I mean, I think biologically, is like the sexual drive is stronger in the male, right? So, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you're more educated on these things. Do you see mostly boy teens struggling with this? Is that your primarily where you're seeing these challenges?
When it comes to, excessive exposure, when we're talking about pornography,
Mhm.
yeah. And, most of the people that I would talk to, it's like, my son has, gone off the deep end. And so to answer your question, like, yeah, most of the stories I hear, and, it mostly comes from boys, which, biologically, like you alluded to, does make sense, right?
Yeah.
And, there is a lot of influence on, why that might be, whether there might be less open conversations about, like a girl growing into a woman and the changes that she expects versus like a boy growing into a man. It's like we sort of like keep certain things on the hush hush or even sort of like
Mhm.
shame or maybe even mock certain things. So as a boy is transitioning from, a young boy into, a budding, growing adolescent into a man, it is, I mean, not to, it might sound funny, but it's like, what is going on? Like, it's like
Right.
my body's exploding. Like, I'm experiencing all these things. And if there is no one to speak to them about it, particularly a father figure, like, hey, like, I've seen this movie before.
Mhm.
Like I know where the jump scares are. Like I know what to expect. This
Yes.
is
Mhm.
normal, whether it's feelings of arousal, whether it's just certain things happening with your body. It's like this is part of the package. So
Mhm.
here's how to prepare, here's what to expect, right? Because otherwise, again, with the fast rise of the internet getting quicker every day, and particularly in the age of AI, which we haven't even touched on yet,
Yep.
if they have questions, they're going to find answers.
Yeah.
Whether the answers are true or relevant or not, they're going to find answers. So, what I'm a huge advocate for is just the power of conversation where there doesn't need to be shame attached to it.
Mhm.
It's just like, we don't got to keep it on the DL. It's just like, all right, here's what's going on, but just like, don't make a big fuss about it. It's just like, all right, this is what's happening to your body. These are the names of your body parts. Like, we don't gotta be, like, cutesy about it. It's like, this is
Right.
what's going on. It's
Yeah.
less mysterious. It's less of a surprise, perhaps, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you get to actually demonstrate the fact that you're coming from a shame-free place. It's just like, again, it really comes down to just clarity and the KISS rule. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
This is what's going on. So there's a whole ton to go into, but, yeah,
Yeah.
that's where to start.
Yes. So, I mean, like you mentioned, it's just, I mean, it's a natural progression, from boy to man, from girl to womanhood, and like those questions, that curiosity, like that's normal, that's natural.
Mhm.
It's it's good. It's good insofar as it's who we are as human beings. But then it comes down to like, okay, what are the answers that they're getting? Um, and and I never got the birds and the bees talk. I had to figure it out on my own. But what I'm hearing is that conversation or yeah, if it's a singular conversation, is having to happen even earlier and earlier
Mhm.
than maybe it used to be. Are you seeing the same thing?
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, we're talking about age of exposure. We're talking about anywhere between the ages of 8 to 10,
Mhm.
because of, increased, or I should say, like, children are being given smartphones, iPads, devices at a younger and younger age.
Right.
So the likelihood, of course, is going to be higher that they might stumble onto something accidentally or something
Mhm.
might slip through the cracks, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, again, it really comes down to what are my children being exposed to? Not at a matter of like always playing goalie, like at a
Right.
matter of paranoia. But I mean, we talk about this in something I built called the Rebooted Teen Parent Program, which is literally like a free set of resources and modules for parents to check out, conversation starters, things to be aware of, and practical steps to walk both yourself when you're
Mhm.
preparing for these types of conversations, what you can help your child with and just some tools to get some momentum going. But one of the things we talk about are just literally some apps to look out for. Apps that might seem like seemingly innocent on the surface, but have been known to have certain things kind of, sneak in through the back door. Kind of call out a few, even YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat is arguably the biggest one, Discord,
Mhm.
lots of adult content on there. It's just a matter of, knowing what's out there. The biggest lesson of all, I'm sure we'll crack into this more, but really what my heart is at the end of the day, when it comes to solving the problem, it's about choosing your target effectively. It's not you versus your child. It's both of you together versus the problem. So the big moral that I really want to express, we can talk about filters and blockers and limiters on your phone and devices. Those are great places to get started. I have limiters on my devices just to make sure I'm not scrolling too much, but particularly when you're young, very, very important to start off your process that way if certain behaviors have proven to be unhealthy for you. But at the end of the day, the best filter that anybody really is ever going to have is going to be themselves.
Right.
That's the truth. So the types of skills that I'm looking to encourage and enforce and hold my clients accountable to is that sense of self-awareness. Like
Mhm.
I said, what's going on internally to the point where it's affecting me externally. That's a whole process in itself. It's not my role to, first of all, tell somebody what's important to them.
Right.
How can I do that? Like, that's not I can't ninja my way into your brain. It's like, "This is what you want." My job is to understand and hear and provide the facilitation for someone to discover what that is.
Mhm.
But when it comes to, let's say somebody has fallen into an unhealthy coping pattern, whether it's with excessive scrolling or even something like pornography, it's not just about placing the problem on a pedestal. It's about shining a spotlight on the solution, not
Right.
just about running away from what you don't want, but running toward what you do want. One of the
Mhm.
Mhm.
first things to do is identify what that thing is, Who is it that you actually want to be? What is it that you actually want to do? And the more specific and clear and shameless one can be about that, then the road toward one's own recovery is much more clear. Won't be
Yes.
simple. I'm sorry, won't be easy, but will be simple. This
Mhm.
is where coaching comes into play. It's the accountability, it's the structure, and it's the system to, again, not just run away from the dark, but run toward that light. And our role as fathers and father figures is to, again, know what that end destination is. Because again, we can talk about filters and blockers all day long, but let's say once our children are free range and,
Right.
they're without the filters and blockers and things like that,
Mhm.
do they have the muscle memory and the wherewithal to make those values informed decisions? Not
Mhm.
that they're going to be perfect all the time, who is, but it's
Right.
about
Right.
having that foundation to fall back onto. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
enough reps of, okay, this is what I want and what choices will lead me closer or further away to that thing.
Mhm.
Enough practice with that. Again, even if we slip up, even if we deviate, if we're distracted, there's that muscle memory to come home to and to kind of fall back into. So those are the skills that at the end of the day are the most important thing. It's not just the thing, it's not just what's happening on the screen, but the place from which it's coming from. Like, what am I medicating? What am I running away from? What type of feeling does this give me? And how can I perhaps achieve this feeling without compromising my morals or standards? So I know that's a whole
Mhm.
lot, but at the end of the day, that's really what the process is all about. It's not the thing, it's the place from which it's coming from.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So when you're having these conversations to like help identify that, like where do you normally start at? And like whereas we as fathers and father figures, first come to that conversation with kids or even ourselves to break that bad habit to be able to start the good one.
One of the simplest but most effective ways to get started is a healthy combo of self awareness and visualization. So, just to give an example, one of the first exercises that I do in the rebooted teen program is something that I like to call the park bench exercise. So, we'll walk you through it super quick.
Yeah.
Basically, what you do is you create a scenario where basically a young person is sitting on a bench in a park, like beautiful day, like it is today, end of April. It's like prime weather, high with a 75-degree. It's awesome, right? Couple minutes go by, and somebody sits next to them on this imaginary park bench. They look over and they realize that the person that sat next to them is them, about a year and a half, 2 years into the future. Fully rebooted, as I like to call it. Just no longer dependent upon a compulsive behavior and living the life that they actually want to live. So upon this realization, they look at them like, oh, snap. Like, I have so many questions for you. Like, you pick their brain about like how they're feeling and what they've got going on, and ultimately how they got to that certain point
Yeah.
where again, they're living the kind of life that they want to live. So what they do is they put pen to paper and again, they identify what it is that they want and what it will take for them to get there. They
Mhm.
are identifying the finish line themselves, right?
Right.
So it's starting there. So once they have that ideal life after rebooting in mind, then it's about, okay, cool. What's it going to take to get there? What does it include and what does it not include? Remember, the target is simply just not don't watch porn,
Mhm.
you know? Because if you're just, again, kind of having your hustle be running away from something, that thing is still gonna, like, be your primary motivator. Even
Right.
with the word "don't," it's still sort of like your thing. And if you do slip or relapse, I mean, how much more do we feel we're gonna beat ourselves up because of it? "You
Right.
said you wouldn't do this anymore." It's just like, what is it that you want?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then the art form from there is really about that self-analysis, that self-awareness, that self-compassion, and asking yourself questions when it comes to what strengths do I have that can help me get closer to who and where I want to be? What have I already got working for me? Who can I lean on? Who can I trust?
Mhm.
What dangers or pitfalls should I watch out for? What opportunities do I have in the future? What do I actually want to see happen? One exercise that I love to share with clients, young and old, as far as that self analysis work, is something called dialoguing. It comes from the world of internal family systems. And again, long story short, it's a journaling exercise. So, what you do, really, really cool. I literally do this all the time. It's a great sort of self-awareness exercise. Plus, if you're a creative person, you'll love this. Basically, what you want to do is you take out a notebook, something to write with, and you essentially script out a conversation between yourself and what George Collins, author of a book called Breaking the Cycle, would call a sub personality. So let's
Mhm.
say you're having like an urge to watch porn, for example, right? Let's call that maybe quote unquote your addict self. So it's
Okay.
the part of you that wants to act out. Now, just in that one example, but before we even get to the exercise, you separate yourself from this sub personality. Even just the word sub personality, it's a part of you, it's not the entirety of you, right?
Right.
So here's this sub personality, your addict self on one side, and here's you. So just in this one example, you are not it, and it
Mhm.
is not you. You separate yourself from it, not out of a means of like numbing it out or like medicating it or like suppressing it or shaming yourself or even having a feeling or thought like that. It's just like it's a part of me. It's not the entirety of me. So literally, if I were to do a dialoguing exercise, I might say like addict Chris and like literally write down a thought from that sub-personality's perspective. I'm
Okay.
literally processing that sensation in real time,
Mhm.
validating it by giving it a name, Addict Chris, or you can come up with your own name. And then I would respond like Chris, and I would speak from my perspective.
Yeah.
You have a full-on conversation with this part of you. Again, if I cut my pinky, I'm not gonna, like, scream at it like, "What is wrong with you? You shouldn't be here." It's like, no, I'm gonna tend to that wound.
Right. Right.
Give it what it needs. So just to tie it all together, why this one simple yet super effective exercise is so impactful. It's kind of like this. Let's imagine you come home from work, or for a younger person, you come home from school, right? You get home, you plop on the couch after a long day, and then all of a sudden you hear a knock at the door. And it's just like, now, you know, get to the door, you open up the door, and the person at the door is somebody that you're not exactly a fan of. So the first person who just popped into your mind, Paul's like, "I know who it is."
It's Andrew. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, great. They're at the door. So in this scenario, right, you have 2 different options. You can either like, ugh, like slam the door in their face, or you can invite them in for a little while and ask why they came to visit you at all. Because it's not like they knocked on your door for no reason.
Right.
This dialoguing exercise, it's really about choosing option number 2. It's asking them questions like, "What do you want? You knocked on my door for a reason. Your nervous system is trying to give you information about you. And the more we sort of like, ignore it or distract ourselves, we're never going to know what that thing is, you
Yeah.
know? But the best part is because it's your house, you have the final say to when it's time for them to leave. It can be
True.
really, really empowering, and it all takes place in the comfort and safety of your own notebook. So I know this is a very long answer, but just to tie it all together, one of the first steps to take is doing 2 things. 1, establishing what your child wants.
Mhm.
What's the kind of life that they want to live? Do they have a goal? Do they have a dream? Do they have an aspiration? What is it that they actually want? And then the second step is that self awareness. What perhaps might be an internal hindrance to that thing? What's a behavioral hindrance to that thing? A lot of the answers are found within the question. And if it takes some facilitation on our part, again, our role is to hold them accountable to what they want, as opposed to just kind of playing relapse goalie, right? That's not
Right,
our
right.
job. It's about what is it that you want and holding them to following through with that thing.
Yeah.
It's the identify the finish line and the self-awareness of what it takes to get there. That's really what it is, and that's what we wanna help encourage.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that's really empowering too, Being raised in a Catholic military household, it was very authoritarian and
Mm.
and it was like, do this because this is what you're supposed to do. And
Mhm.
100%.
so, and I I love my parents. My dad is still with us. I love him. I have a great relationship with him. I'm very grateful for how they raised us. But that was one challenge that I have had to overcome as the years have gone on. And that's like, okay, like I wasn't bought in to any of that.
Right,
Mhm.
And
which I totally get, by the way.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. But what you're suggesting is like get that buy-in, help them unlock their own potential as opposed to and more often than not, there will be a alignment because these are basic principles and whatnot. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. And then the second thing that struck me is I really like that analogy with the house and somebody knocking at the door because
Mhm.
especially if it's the person I'm thinking of, like
It
you
Sorry,
don't
took
Andrew.
answer and they're going to go and, like,
Right?
bang on the window,
I
and
would
then
do
they're
Yeah,
that.
going to, like, keep calling you, and then they're going to come around and check in the back,
yeah.
and, they're just going to keep trying, and by the time they get in, then it's going to be a worse experience. So, like, why not just nip it in the bud, and let them in, address the issue, whatever it is, and then, so yeah, I really like that analogy.
Yeah, and if I may, like, I'm totally empathetic to you. The way you were raised, very, very similar. I'm a church boy myself, and not to go too deep into it, but I think it's very, very common. And I think
Mhm.
it is worth at least touching on. 'Cause, whether it was the way you were raised, certain communities, and I'm a Christian myself. Yeah, like it is. Again, sort of like one of those things. It's like we don't talk about this.
Right.
Again, it's a matter of like we were designed a certain way.
Mhm.
So the more we keep that design a secret as far as like what to expect in the way we grow, in the way we feel, in some of the thoughts that we think, it's not sinful to have sexual desire at
Right.
all.
Right.
Right now, what we're trying to learn is discipline, and we have conversations around things like consent and context, as in sex as a time and place. But again, if we never engage in those conversations, particularly with, this generation that we're alluding to, we
Mhm.
are, pun intended, left to our own devices.
Right.
You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
I totally hear where you're coming from. I've been in this very similar place.
Yeah. So Chris, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, so yeah, we have similar backgrounds in that, where it's like, okay, this is what you're supposed to do, and then we have these natural urges. We don't know how to process them, and then we end up doing what we're not supposed to do. And then if you're also like me in this sense, then there's all the guilt, and then maybe the opposite of what you're talking about of separating yourself from your sub addict self,
Mhm.
and you're like, I'm a failure, like, and all that. Is was that similar for you as well, or walk us through that journey of um dealing with that and then how you eventually came to your like is apparent what you seem to be very self-aware and bought into your own goals. So can you kind of take us through that journey for yourself?
Sure. We're called to, as it's probably Christianese, but we probably heard in many ways, hate the sin but love the sinner, right?
Mhm.
And within my personal experience and within my professional experience, I'm yet to meet anybody who is able to find themselves in a healthier place simply by hating the sin enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there needs to be, yeah, that self-awareness piece. There needs to be that, the way I say it all the time, what's happening internally to the point where it's affecting me externally. I mean, but it's again, it is a common tale, particularly if you're raised maybe in the church or like in a certain community where conversations about sex were sort of like poo-pooed or just like again swept under the rug. And if you even have a thought like XYZ, like, there might be some shame involved, certainly some guilt involved. Guilt and shame is insidious, man, because it's like guilt is like, "Oh, I did something bad." Shame is like, "I am bad." And
Right.
if you're walking around like that, it will show up in perhaps the way you present yourself in your future relationships. There's just this trepidation around conversations around certain things. And if we can really break the stigma of, again, like, it's not the thing, it's the place from which it's coming from. Like,
Right.
we can be aware of our sense of intentionality.
Mhm.
It's like, James writes, faith without works is dead. So some people might use, just pray more, which is not bad advice, but then it's like, okay, like Father, like I believe that you have built me with, power and love and a sound mind. Teach me how to use it.
Right.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like the story of, 2 farmers. Basically, they both are expecting a huge storm, right? And they both pray to God for a harvest, but only
Mhm.
one farmer went out and sowed their seeds.
Right.
Which farmer do you think received their blessing, right?
Right.
It's that accountability piece. It's that actions piece. It's that follow through piece. And really, in this program, whether you were raised in the church or not, I'm giving you seeds to sow. Like, it's my goal and my desire and my drive to help you, like, know what to do, especially if you're a father and you're like, okay, we're talking about this generation, we're talking about the internet and all that. I don't know how to get started. Like, I don't
Right.
know what to say because I don't want to say the wrong thing because I don't want to make my child feel bad. And, because I
Mhm.
know the way I was raised and, we always want to try to improve on where we come from in certain ways, right?
Right.
So, again, it's never ever gonna be my role how to tell a parent how to be a parent. That's not what it's like, how are you gonna teach LeBron James how to play basketball? Like, you're not gonna do that.
Right.
But he still has coaches. All I wanna do is, like, give you tools, perhaps some vocabulary, and some, statistic science-backed research to kind of support you so that when you do engage in those conversations, you're prepared. It's
Mhm.
like, if you wanna build a house, I'm gonna give you a hammer. I'm gonna give you a saw. Like, you wanna build the house as you deem fit, here are some tools that can help you build the kind of life, relationship with your child that you deserve and one that will remain safe for the both of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, does that answer your question? Does that resonate?
Yeah, it does, thank you. Andrew, were you gonna say something?
So I was in a couple top and like 2 topics back. I mean, you mentioned, if like just we can be running from our vices, like don't watch pornography, don't do this, don't do that. But like if that's our end goal, like we're basically motivating ourselves with kind of a negative. And like you said, just the importance of we need to know what our end goal is. So like for me, it's like I want to be a dad and a loving husband and they don't watch porn or they don't do this or that. And so it's like it's a lot easier to orient just for I agree. I'm just saying I agree completely with your take on this because yeah, if my whole thing is just don't do bad behavior, then what am I really living for or striving for? And I'm gonna be 10 times more likely to fall back into that bad habit just because that's all I'm thinking about is don't do it. It's like rather than I want to do that, so I'm gonna cut these vices out of my life.
Exactly. It's like, why would you use the vice to motivate you if you're trying to quit the vice?
Right.
It's I understand, and this is not to discredit things like withdrawals, and again, it's not to say that it's going to be easy, but I love what you and I agree with me. That's a huge part of the process, choosing your target effectively. It's more than just a behavioral change, it's an
Mhm.
identity shift, It's like, have my new set of behaviors be the byproduct of an internal change. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how you know that, growth is occurring. One thing that I tell my clients often, one thing that we have some fun with is, Tobey Maguire, okay? Now, we know him as the OG Spider-Man,
Yep.
Now, when he was given that role, right? It's one of the biggest superhero movies ever. And when you notice, like, the first third of that movie, he's like a scrawny, nerdy looking high school kid. And then there's the famous scene where he gets bit by the spider. And then literally in the next scene, he's like in his bedroom and all of a sudden he's jacked.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, this is 2002. So this is pre CGI and before AI. Maybe they did like a little makeup or whatever. Moral of the story is that's him.
Mhm.
He needed to put that muscle and weight on fast. So if he wanted to become Spider Man, he needed to change his habits. He needed to alter his lifestyle, his decisions, his diet, just about everything to fall into this new identity and be able to portray it from a sense of authenticity.
Mhm.
It's not just like show up to set, learn a bunch of lines and play pretend. It's like if you want to play Spider-Man, you got to be Spider-Man,
Right.
Fast forward to the next year, Tobey Maguire does another movie called Seabiscuit, like a horse racing a movie. Now, he played a jockey. Now, jockeys are very skinny, usually very short. So all that Spider-Man muscle, you need to lose it all over again in order
Mhm.
to play this new character, seep into this new identity from a place of authenticity. He couldn't just think about it, be like, okay, I got to pretend to be this. It's like, no, what do I need to change? What do I need to alter? And what do I need to focus on in order to live out this kind of identity from an authentic place? He does Seabiscuit. The next movie he does, Spider-Man 2. You can see the pattern. He needed to change his identity all over again in order to play this role from, like a real spot. That's human potential, right? We have the ability to do that exact thing when we're very, very clear on the quote unquote character that we want to play, when we're very, very clear, shameless, and succinct about the kind of life that we actually want to live. The only thing that's left to do is the follow through. The only thing that's left to do is the system to follow,
Mhm.
And when it comes to, falling off track or slipping, again, you're not going to mark your progress by how long it's been since the last day you acted out. That's not what it's about. It's about how consistent and how intentional am I remaining to bringing my own Spider Man to life.
Mhm.
It's like,
Right.
even if I fall off course, do I get back on? There's no horse to get back on. It's just like, this is my life now. This is who
Right.
I'm deciding to be from now on. I know I'm
Yeah.
going off, but like it really just drives home the point.
It does.
Again, to repeat, it's not just about what you don't want, it's about what do you want? Who
Mhm.
do you want to be? And our role again as fathers and father figures is to know what that is. Again, it's not the behavior, it's the place from which it's coming from. Like, what is it that you actually want? And the more we can advocate for that, the more questions we can ask targeting that will have a higher likelihood of not only being able to help our child more effectively because we'll literally know what it is that they want, but
Right.
we'll also be able to increase the likelihood of having our child know that we can hold them down, that
Mhm.
we can support them. Not a matter of like letting them run amok and do whatever they want. It's just like we have done the work that not many will do. What is it that you want? And how can I help? You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets to a certain point where we can't do the work for them anymore, but what we can is facilitate the process so that way they can practice using the skills to have them
Mhm.
be their own coach over
Right.
time. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I love this, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And what I really like about this approach, like helping really anybody that you're talking to, but in this scenario, like helping your kid identify their end goal and helping them learn about themselves and become more self-aware. Like really that can apply to anything. I mean, yes, especially to,
Mhm.
you know, breaking a porn habit or anything more extreme like that, but also just anything in the parenting realm in general, like akin to it, like just phone usage in general,
Mhm.
or whether or not to participate in a sport or grades or what you're doing around the house, how you're participating, how you're helping. it all comes down to like, okay, like what do you want? Who's the person you want to be? And some of that also is like, okay, who are we as a family? And that
Mhm.
kind of ties in together. But I did want to spend a little bit of time. I know we're already kind of running out of time here, but you said you want to be a dad. So how is this, the work that you're doing now and the work that you've done as an individual, to get to where you are now, because that's been a long journey. Like, how is that shaping the kind of father that you want to be?
That is a beautiful question, man. It's funny because, I'm turning 34 this year, and, a lot of my friends, the members around my age, they're, having children of their own, and,
Mhm.
they'll share a lot of beautiful experiences, they'll share a lot of stressful experiences. So I know that I am due for some humility. I know I'm anticipating the moment and any parent listening to be like, "Yeah, that's right." Just in the sense of like, I know that it's going to be a shock to my system, you know what I mean? So I certainly anticipate that, but if I have prepared myself in either way. Sure, there is, the head knowledge as far as, how the brain works and, things to expect, when it comes to things like screen usage, particularly when there's a sexual element in mind. I've done the training as far as how to engage in those types of conversations without making shame the star of the show or do as I say and not as I do, as like, my, leading man, right? It's funny, I'm just kinda processing in the moment, but when I was younger, right, I used to do a lot of, like, theater when I was a kid, and, I think in the most ideal of circumstances I like to think of the home as like the rehearsal room, and what I mean by that is sometimes I have felt the pressure to kinda just be on all the time,
Mhm.
whether it was for my parents or for my family as a whole, and I've noticed it in my classrooms as well, there's again, when you add an element like social media, there's just like this pressure to just kinda be on,
Right.
whether you run the risk of FOMO or being ostracized or teased, bullied, whatever. But when the home is like the rehearsal room, it's like, this isn't the show. You don't have to perform,
Mhm.
This is the place where you can ask questions. This is the place to mess up and we can laugh about it because we're all working on the show together. You
Right.
have your different directors with different areas of specialty. You got your music director, you got the stage director, you got the drama director, you got the choreographer. Like we're all trying to work together to make the show better. So that way, when you do find yourself on stage and it is time to, show up and show out and give them your best, you already have that muscle memory built. You've
Mhm.
done the preparation work. You know your stuff. You know your character.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You know how to, portray your own story from a place of authenticity, but that doesn't happen simply by just walking on stage and after just memorizing some lines. It takes intentional work with a team to help
Mhm.
craft the show, to help encourage you, to call you out, not out of a sense of you suck, just out of a sense of like, it's a collaboration,
Right.
right? So when I become a father one day, again, I want to give myself the grace of knowing that I'm not going to be perfect.
Mhm.
But if there's any image to return to or to keep at the forefront of my intentions, it's that attitude.
Mhm.
This is the rehearsal room. This is where we're going to work on the show together. It's where you can ask questions, it's where you can mess up. And if you feel like you're lost, if I'm the director, you have a good actor-director relationship when an actor comes up to you and asks questions. It's like, "Here's what
Yeah.
I was thinking. This is what I think this character would do." And a good director would ask questions back. It's like, "Okay, like, why do you feel that way?" And you come up with it together. It's a team. It's
Yeah.
like, if I'm the captain of the team, we're still a team nonetheless, you
Mhm.
know? It's like if we're trying to play the game better, it's my role to facilitate. It's my role to encourage. It's my, you're setting the tone
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
director. You're setting the tone as a father. If you're the head of the household, it's not a matter of like my way or the highway. It's a matter of you set the tone. You set the pace. You set the precedent, And again, even if you don't do everything that you set out to do, even if you're imperfect, which spoiler alert, we all are and will be, what's your foundation? What is the intention? You know, we don't got to treat every moment of our child's life as a stage. They've got enough of that going on. So
Ain't that the truth?
I know I'm sort of it's such a
Yeah.
beautiful question. I wasn't expecting it, but I love it.
I like your answer, and it kinda opened my mind to a perspective I didn't even think about. I thought that, you know, because 'cause I'm a wannabe dad too, you know, you and I are pretty much the same age, Chris, and we both want that awesome family. I was just as you're talking, I was like, "That is so true." The home is where we should be making our mistakes because we have that support and that love surrounding us. And we're challenging each other to through our mistake, like, everyone in the home gets to see our mistakes, and we're challenging each other to do better and talk through, like, what went wrong, what happened, and getting that input and that feedback from just everybody in order to be, you know, better for the kids, better kids, for us as better fathers. I mean, Paul, you're the dad here, so
Yeah, just barely, right? But no, that definitely resonates. And Chris, thank you for sharing, and Andrew too. Yeah, I mean, I think we're just practicing every day, and if we approach it as that, as like, okay, it's not, I'm not a good man, or I'm not a good father, or I'm not a good thing. It's like I'm learning to be a good man. I'm learning to be a good father. And that all ties back into what you were saying, Chris, throughout this episode is like, who is it that we want to be? Who is
mhm,
that man we want to be? Who is that father figure we want to be? And learning along the way, because like, we if we don't know who we are, and if we don't know the demons we're dealing with, then we're going to be paddling upstream in the dark. Like, we don't know the obstacles that are in the way. So, Chris, thank you for walking us through those. And you also gave us and our listeners some very practical takeaways,
mhm,
either with how to approach things generally with their kids, or the apps to be aware of, and also the services that you offer. So, Chris, I really appreciate your time and opening up and sharing.
yes,
And I wish we had a whole other hour because there's so many more.
I would
Was
love
that?
that.
I could totally do another hour.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll
We'll
have
have to have
to
you
we'll
back.
have to bring it back. So yeah, man, thank you so much. With that, I know we're out of time, so we will drop you your show links in our episode. If there is one thing you wanna tell our guests before we go, what is that? Our listeners.
Pressures. Uh, I think if there's one major takeaway that I would encourage a listener to take away, you can't protect a heart that you haven't reached. And again, it's not the problem that we're going to make the star of the show. We are going to be actions oriented. We're going to be solutions oriented. We're going to be compassion driven as opposed to shame inducing. It takes time to perhaps break out of some negative muscle memory to lead from a healthy place ourselves. And that's what the programs I've built are here to help you do. Again, it's not about me telling you what to do. I want to give you tools. I want to give you support. I want to give you coaching and facilitation to have you be the best dad that you could be. So remember who is the most important person in the scenario. It's not the porn. It's not the screen. It's not the problem. It's your child.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
if we make our intention toward reaching them, then we have an increased likelihood of creating a healthier situation for everyone.
Amen. Amen. All right, Chris, thank you so much. Andrew, thank you. And listeners, thank you. And until next time.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Paul. Thank you all.
All righty.
All right.